Hi again, I'm Dr. Rumsey, and this video is about the instructions project. As I stated in the previous video, it's a good idea to go back and read these slides on your own time. I'm going to be going fairly quickly just to give you an overview of the project, but there's a lot of really good information in here that would be really helpful that I'm only going to skim. Let's get started. So the project itself requires 4 tasks. The first thing is that you need to identify an audience that has a need. You need to think of some people that don't know how to do something that would benefit from knowing how to do that something. The second thing is you're going to need to identify a series of tasks that are needed to complete whatever the function is, right? The third thing is to present those tasks in an organized way that's also visually appealing so that you actually are enabling a user to do whatever it is that you're setting out for them to do. And then you're going to test those instructions to make sure they actually work. So there's one product that you're going to write and one that you're going to create. Both are kind of writing though. The first one is an evaluation plan. So before you actually put together your instructions, you're going to think about how you're going to test them. When you think about your end user before you begin something and you have that end user in mind, it changes how you write things from the beginning. The other thing is that you're going to create what would be a print-based instructional text. This is one that would be suitable for printing, but obviously you're going to be submitting it online as a PDF most likely. So here are deadlines that are appropriate for summer 2020. Again, if this is not your semester, make sure that you look at your course calendar and the slides that are available on Brightspace to align with your semester. So, excuse me, the next thing is purposes. I want you guys to have experience creating instructional texts, and I want you to be able to provide usable documentation for an organization or for individuals. The reality is that instructional texts are something that are unique to technical writing, whereas a lot of the documentation that we're going to do in this class and the genres that we talk about are used throughout the business world. Instructional texts are unique to technical environments. Most of the time, business environments don't need instruction sets in quite the same way. When you're crafting and creating new designs, new widgets, new services, you've got to be able to help users use those products. So there are a couple purposes. So as I was saying, instructional texts are important for engineers and computer specialists because they help readers complete tasks like behaviors and actions, assembly of objects, the classic one, operating certain types of equipment, and implementation of certain types of processes, particularly if you're talking about IT and computer engineering, where you're not really building a thing per se. So in spite of the fact that we know instantly when someone says an instruction manual, you all know what that looks like, right? We've all gotten pieces of furniture, for example, that are provided instructions, or we've gotten new Lego sets, for example, is a favorite here at my household with my 40-something-year-old husband. So when they're in the workplace, people know what they are, but they're also really poorly done most of the time. We all have seen those really bad examples of instructions that are just incomprehensible. And sometimes we assume they're written by someone who is a non-native speaker, for example, but other times they're just really bad. So what we're trying to do here is to come up with and have experience with creating good ones so that we have that example going forward in our careers. So the ability to write clear, concise, and coherent instruction text will benefit you in the long run. And also colleagues are going to really appreciate someone who can explain something really well, even if that explanation is just in person and talking. So this is going to give you experience with that too. So just for fun, here's one of my favorite sets of instructions of all time. It is from Pottery Barn, and as you can see, they do a spectacular job of explaining how to assemble a chair and cushion. This also reminds me of the meme, the push button receive bacon, where it's for like hand dryers. That one cracks me up too. Okay, back on task. So a successful project is going to be learning how to do these things, identifying the tasks, formatting those instructions to be easily used, and then testing those instructions on actual users to make sure that they work. So the first thing is the evaluation plan. One way to ensure that instructions are clear is to have that end user in mind from the get-go. And so if you plan on how to test them, So you're going into it with a plan of who your audience is and how you're going to test whether that audience knows what they're doing by using your instructions. It changes everything. And so you're going to write a report with that plan in mind. It's to develop a protocol-aided test. That's kind of a fancy way of saying just a method for testing to actually ensure that your instructions work. Okay, if you observe others, any researcher, and that's what you really are in this case, is a researcher. This is what researchers do. They test things, sometimes over and over and over, to make sure that they get something right. They can see precisely what others do as they attempt to work with technology, and it gives researchers a chance to see where the instructions need revision. That's key. If something doesn't work, if your reader or user is confused, that's where you know you need help. So, testing instructions effectively, you need to plan ahead. You need to determine who it is, who's the end user, what you're going to ask them to do, where you're going to be testing, how you'll observe them testing, and how you record the actions that you observe, what you're going to do with that data. So the evaluation plan is a report that plans on each of those elements. So in terms of who you're planning on testing, you need to think about what the age group is, if there's a gender consideration there. Level of technological expertise is particularly important for most of you. And then how you plan to find people who meet those characteristics, and then I would say plan to try and test on at least 3 different people. Now, when you're talking about age, gender, level of technological experience, you need to give reasons why those are your end users. For example, suppose you want to create a set of instructions on how to change the oil in your car. You might think, okay, well, who needs these instructions? How about someone very young, maybe who doesn't have a driver's license yet, for example, someone who is maybe middle-aged that just has never done it before, and then maybe someone who is actually more advanced and knows how to do it, but could really read it critically to make sure that you've met all the things that you're trying to do. That's the idea. So you're also going to talk about what you're going to ask them to do. So are you going to give them just the set of instructions and say, ready, go? Are you just going to have them, are you going to be present for it? Are you going to observe them in some way? Given that this is an online class and given that we're in the middle of a pandemic, you may not be able to be present for them going through the instruction set, but you have to kind of think of those things and plan ahead. What are the steps they'll need to do in order for you to be able to see that your instructions actually work? And define those tasks carefully, because again, the more you plan, the better off your instructions will be and the testing will be. And then how you're going to observe them, I already mentioned this. Whether or not you can observe them this summer, that's debatable. All right, so again, you're going to be writing a memo to me about your instruction, about your evaluation plan. This is the same as what I had in the job search project, except I've added some specific information where I've said, for example, as requested, I've completed an instruction set on how to change a tire. The following memo discusses the plans for testing my instruction set. You get the idea. This just gives some specifics, and it also reminds you of what the formatting should look like. So the instructions document, this is the big kahuna, so to speak. This is where you actually have to create a set of instructions with images and steps and cautions and all kinds of things like that to make sure that it is a usable thing. Your particular set of instructions might look different than some of the things I'm talking about, particularly if you are creating them for a job situation. Some of you, for example, if you're a set of instructions for how to change a tire is going to look drastically different from, say, you work somewhere in Warsaw in the medical device industry, and you actually are creating a set of instructions for something in that regard. They're going to look different, but the principles there are the same. One of the things to keep in mind is that the best instructions tend to be highly visual. This happens both in images and also in page design. One thing you're going to probably use a lot is screen capture if you are doing anything regarding a computer, that sort of thing. There are a lot of different software free options online for screen capture. You also can just hit the print screen button. If you don't know how to do screen captures, you can always call the help desk. So once you've selected the task and audience, I recommend that you start by writing out the steps to do whatever it is you want to do. Don't start with the images, just start with the steps. I would number them, and I want to emphasize, make sure that it's only one step per number. Sometimes what happens is students will turn in a set of instructions and they only have like 10 numbers, and each of those has like 5 things that is happening in it. So slow down and really think about what are the steps. Also, keep in mind your reader as you're doing this. One step per number so that that person can do one action and then move on to the next one. One of the challenges with knowing who your reader is or expecting who your reader is not to treat them like they're stupid. Okay, they may be unexperienced or not familiar with whatever task you're doing, but that doesn't make them dumb. And so you need to write in a respectful manner. So you can't assume too much knowledge, but you can't assume too little. So the challenge here is to find the right balance. If you're talking about, building your own computer, for example, you could think of someone who is savvy with using a computer, but has never built one before as a sample person. If you're doing something really basic with using Photoshop, for example, is another one. Someone who's computer savvy but has never used that program is a good idea. So once you've written all of those steps and numbered them, that's when you start to think about what images are necessary. Sometimes you're going to find a single image can count for several steps, maybe with numbers on it or arrows. There's a visuals lecture that's available, as well as chapter 8 in our textbook that can give you guidelines for what images to include and when. Think about each step and what the reader or user would actually need to see in order to be able to complete the task. So the visuals need to align with the corresponding step. Again, one image might work for several, and so you just got to start to do a little bit of document design. Microsoft Word's kind of a pain. It can work, but I would recommend once you do that to submit your instruction set maybe as a PDF, because it locks in the location of images and how you've arranged it on the page. Pay attention to the layout. Make sure that you're not scrunching things up too much, that you're not also drawing things out too much. Think about what is respectful and usable to that end user, and that will help you make these decisions. So topic selection, keep in mind this can be work related. Say you work in Warsaw and you have a set of instructions you're working on already. Use it. That'd be great. But it also can be hobby related. I was actually a florist in a previous life. So back in I think it would have been 1997, 1998 maybe, is when I took my technical writing class, and I did a set of instructions using floral arranging, and actually it turned out really well. So you might have a hobby or something you do at home, cleaning a lawnmower, decorating a wedding cake, whatever. It also can be computer related for less experienced users, but you need to, again, make sure that you are thinking of the correct level of information or ability that your user has in order to ascertain who needs the instructions. All right, and here's the summary, which isn't necessarily relevant to you if this is not summer 2020. If you have any questions, as always, you can email me at rumsey@pfw.edu.